Welcome to episode number 3 of the Hacker Dialogues. So we actually made it to episode number 3. I know that it's taken a while, but we are slowly but surely cranking these things out. So sorry about the delay there. But we actually ended up filming this one at Shmoocon of 2018 up in Washington, D.C. this year. And we had a great time. We basically found a random little corridor in the bottom of the hotel, kind of down a hallway that we thought was completely abandoned and empty. It turned out it wasn't. We had one person at least walk by during the podcast, and we thought that it was nice and quiet down there. But you'll probably notice that there's like this, I don't know, soothing hum in the background where there's an air conditioner basically running nearby. So sorry about the sound a little bit on this one. But hey, in this episode, we had a lot of great topics. We talked about personal digital security. We talked about password vaults, talked about password cracking, and a whole lot more. So check out this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. And I promise it won't be like 2 months before the next one. Here's a riff.
What do you use for an email client?
Like for work or
just whatever. Like what do you use for an email client?
my browser?
Your browser? Yeah. For like different browsers for one email or like for every email account, or do you just one browser, one email account, or one browser, all the fucking email accounts?
One browser, all the email accounts.
Okay. What about you?
Well, for personal stuff, I have one browser. I mean, I just use Chrome for the webmail app. I have a couple email accounts tied into like one account, so like they all get sent to the same inbox, and then Outlook for work because we have an Exchange environment.
Yeah, Outlook.
You kind of have to use it.
Yeah, I remember that stuff. Yeah, I tend to use one browser per email account. Like I use a browser for my personal, a browser for my work email account, and then I actually then also use Thunderbird, but it's not really for email. I use Thunderbird because if you use Thunderbird or an email client and you want to send payloads or files rather to someone and you use a certain email provider, they actually don't like check. It's like whatever the fuck you want, right? So so I do.
You don't need to beat around the bush. It's Yahoo.
Yeah,
you can say whatever the hell you want there.
It's Yahoo. Yahoo will let you send whatever you want. So
what's funny about it is that the web server side of Yahoo Mail does actual AV checks on payloads. But if you connect through Thunderbird, like you're saying, out to the MTA, you can straight up send like blatantly malicious executables. Raw Metasploit payloads.
Really? Yeah. Oh yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. You actually made my life easier. Well, I mean, I have like throwaway accounts that I use. So yeah, there are any engagements where we are doing like command and control type testing. Like I'll do that. Use Yahoo and some kind of account to send payloads. It makes my life much easier. So.
But I mean, that's just on the send, right? So like on the receive.
Oh yeah.
Sure, but that's half the battle.
Honestly,
it really is half the battle.
It actually might
send and malicious executable is actually pretty
It might
tough.
be 2/3 of the battle.
Yeah.
Does it just seem more inconspicuous because you're sending it from Yahoo as opposed to just like propping up an SMTP server?
Well, okay, so
and sending it from the domain that you own.
It's how much Yahoo is willing to.
So have you ever actually set up a mail server to try and deliver email on the modern internet?
No, not in like the past decade.
Yes, because now it is a monumental pain in the ass. You have to think about a whole lot of things like reputation. And Yeah, there's a whole lot that goes into it, and like one of my sayings here recently has been, simple mail transfer protocol. It's really not that simple to deliver mail these days, right? I mean, you're talking about like all the spam from like in the early 2000s, and combating that, and, like delivering malware, and actually there are a couple of mail gateways that we run into that do a really good job, but they still, it's a whack-a-mole type thing. Like we still get payloads through in phishing engagements, but yeah, I just getting the payloads there. So if you setting up your own SMTP server to deliver malicious payloads on the internet is probably not going to work, right?
Okay.
If you're going to try and do phishing, you're probably going to have to find a mailing service that'll allow you to do that. You'll have to use some kind of it would be easier to use some kind of framework to set up like a mailing service to do that.
Okay.
So, and none of that was any of the topics that we were going to think about talking about today.
Well, actually, you kind of touched on a little bit of one of the topics, which is personal security, because you're talking about which email provider you use.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was actually going to say, ideally, I prefer to be using Proton Mail all the time, but it's just not as user friendly for the majority of the cases. I mean, I have I don't even know, 10 freaking email accounts.
Yeah. No, I have email accounts that I check like once every 3 months, just because I have tons of them because I've been doing technology for a long time, so I have many email accounts, and there's like one or two there's work obviously, and then like a main one, and then a second one, but some of the third and fourth and fifth ones I just don't see a lot. Like they just don't bubble up because I don't have I don't use one email client. So my answer to your first question, or my first question was, I use browsers, right? Like I use browsers to check my mail. I don't use really a client anymore.
For sure.
And
even using PGP and stuff, like Mailflow.
Yeah, Mailflow.
Got the plugin in the browser, which is it's pretty user friendly to PGP encrypted messages just with your browser, which is nice.
Exactly. And so generally my primary mail provider is Google, because I think they do a really good job of filtering bad stuff, right?
Yeah.
If you've ever tried to deliver a payload through Google to a place, good luck with that.
Now, I think there is a workaround, but it requires the file to be extremely large. So I've noticed that when I use Google Drive, and Gmail allows you to attach Google Drive documents and provides a private link, if it's over I think 70 megabytes, maybe it's 150, then it's just we can't A/B scan this. Download your own risk, right? But you have to download a massive payload. It's not going to be 3 megs.
So the thing that kind of makes that not as big of an issue to the majority of companies is that that's going to be a Google Drive link that's sent in an email, as opposed to a payload being attached to the email itself. Because with Google, you still can only attach 25 megs or something, a file.
Yeah, but at the end depends on what the receiving
I guess I'm
server allows, right?
God, I guess I'm old school. Just subconsciously, if it's more than a couple of megabytes, I won't email it because I worry. I remember a place I used to work back way in the past having a Solaris mail server that literally had a 75 meg hard drive, and
Is Solaris still a thing anymore?
No, it's not.
I don't know. There's people out there that don't even realize that, because we have users that will send in complaints and be I'm trying to email this 100 meg file and I can't email it.
Why would you want to do that?
Seriously.
Don't do that.
Why? Yeah, why aren't you using
Email is meant for
OneDrive
text.
or Google Drive, or using one of the internal file shares that we have set up for you?
Because SMTP was never meant to do what people try and do.
Yeah.
So we are recording now, right?
Yes.
Are we?
I asked a question and started recording and asked a question because I thought it would be fun. But so we're at Shmoocon, in some undisclosed location somewhere in the hotel where nobody has walked by in the last
hour or so. Yeah,
I'm
at
not
least,
seeing
yeah.
anybody this side of the elevator.
Definitely don't pay attention to that
It's
sign
fair.
there.
Well, yeah, by the time you see that.
Yeah, on the spot or in-person podcasting is an interesting dilemma sometimes, like trying to figure out where to actually do it. We thought, just maybe do it in the hotel room. They're pretty small hotel rooms.
Yeah, every room in Washington D.C. is apparently made for a lot smaller people than people now, right?
I think we found a hallway.
And then it's also on the spot. Podcasting is always fun when you show up to the conference or show up to the location and you haven't really decided on what software you're going to use to do the podcast.
That's
So,
true. Yes.
Yeah, so that's been.
We're new to this.
Yeah,
you
fun
know, don't-
thing.
We're winging it.
Oh yeah, we're definitely winging it. But anyway, we were talking about email security, but one of the topics I thought we would talk about today would be personal security. Like, what do you do to personally secure your digital information? And I mean, this is a really big topic. Last year I did a conference talk on it. And some friends of those in Florida did like a half a day seminar on personal digital security. So it can be, an in-depth topic, but just in general, one of the biggest things that I do is I use a password vault.
Absolutely.
And I use a password vault that I two-factor to get into the password vault, and then every password that I can, like as long as I can make the password, which generally 20 or more characters on whatever site or service it is, that's what I pick.
Yeah, I mean, the most prevalent problem across normal, I guess I'm trying to say it's like the normal people that are just the day-to-day accounts, right? Like your typical public site accounts is password reuse, and using a password vault or some sort of password safe of sorts is, at first it might seem like it's kind of a daunting task because that might be something completely foreign to somebody like a family member. But as soon as you start explaining, like, oh, you literally just need to remember one password from now on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And actually, I just told my wife that the other day. She was complaining about remembering passwords, and I reminded her that I told her that I signed her up for, a password vault, and that she could use that and remember one password, and I would help her, set up all of her passwords. And she's like, "Oh, that's great." And then we didn't do it, but that's a different story.
Are we gonna mention names here, or?
We can. So I like for an offline password storage vault, KeyPass.
Yep.
I mean, KeyPass. There are known ways where, like, if an attacker is on the machine, they can get to your KeyPass data. I think I was.
But it's still encrypted at that point, right?
But that's the thing. I think I still maintain that, like, if you have an attacker on your machine, you have bigger problems than whether or not.
Absolutely.
That's a different story.
I've been on assessments where I've done that specific thing.
Exactly.
And it doesn't end up being a good day for the person that's
Yes, but there's usually another systemic issue that, like.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If they're on your machine, like, even if all that data is encrypted, right? Like, because I assume KeyPass encrypts the database.
Not memory, though.
Not memory, right? But, like, even if they don't have any skills at getting memory, they can just keylog you, right?
Yeah,
like that's the most basic thing that anybody should be able to do, and just wait for you to type in your master password.
For sure. That's absolutely. One of the other things is just people leave it open.
And that's also where two-factor comes in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
even three factors for some
and then LastPass is really good. In the past, I used Dashlane. It wasn't terrible. There are a number of solutions, but I think regardless of whatever flaws would be on a local password, a local password vault or an online password vault, they all have, like, some flaws. Like, there was a flaw in LastPass that. And actually, it was patched very quickly, right? I still think it outweighs you using a really stupid password. We went to dinner last night with someone who was, for lack of a better term, an old school hacker, and they were out of the penetration testing business for the middle of the 2000s, and then they came back from previously pen testing, and then coming back to pen testing, and they're getting back into it. They thought the world would be different, and they found out, yeah, shit didn't change, right? Like it was all still, oh wait, you're using a really bad password, and I mean, and at Black Hills, one of the first things we look for is whether or not you're using really crappy authentication.
Oh yeah.
And more often than not, it is the case, right? So, do you use a different password manager?
Yeah, I use LastPass.
Okay.
And they had a breach maybe a year or 2 years ago.
Was it a breach
It
or
was
was it
breach,
more?
No, so-
breach, but it was
so
like Tavis
they-
Armandi's vulnerability where you could potentially give up your vault if you were in your browser if you clicked on a certain link.
Okay, well, so they actually had a breach where hackers were able to gain access to the databases, but they're all encrypted, right? And LastPass doesn't have any ability to decrypt my database. At least that's what they tell me, right? Maybe there's a backdoor, but we have to trust somebody at some point. And I trust them that there isn't a backdoor, and that the only way to decrypt it is to use my master password and my two-factor password to decrypt the vault. And so, I guess theoretically, if you have powerful enough machines, you could crack the encryption, but
Nah, I don't believe that.
but because theoretically all encryption is crackable.
Well, actually, that ties into the second thing we were going to talk about was password cracking. And I actually recently had a client where we got domain admin, and we got all the password hashes from the domain controller, and we cracked 80% of the passwords. And initially in the in the report, as supporting data, we didn't actually give them any of that data, and they actually called bullshit on it. And they said, "We know some of the people you claim that you cracked passwords for. You didn't crack those passwords because we know that they're long and complicated passwords."
Yeah, they probably just use dictionary words with a symbol on the end, right?
Oh yeah, they use dictionary words with the symbol on the end, right? And so well, how did I crack that?
With Hashcat.
With Hashcat,
Yeah.
yes, exactly, with Hashcat, right? And so, I think, unless you've done a whole lot of password cracking, it may be amazing to you that I can crack your 20 password,
Well,
20 character password.
What happens is people go to this, how strong is my password sites, and they'll let them input like a 12-character password or something, and it'll tell them that it's really strong. And
I'm looking for 1919.
dude, we're filming a podcast right now.
Ooh.
Watch out. 1919. I don't know where that
I think it's on.
I think that's a dead end.
That's a dead end, man.
I would go past the elevators and look that direction.
It was 1-2 over there.
I don't know, man.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
No worries, man.
Hey, that's what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the first person we've seen in like 2 hours. So,
Of course, well, it would happen when we're actually recording.
Nice.
So you're talking about hashes.
Oh yeah, yeah. So most people will go to the sites that are like 12 character, or it'll tell them like 12 characters decently strong or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if they use a freaking dictionary word with a couple of numbers or symbols on the end,
Mm-hmm.
it's game over. It's super easy.
Yeah, happy birthday 123 is not a strong password. If you have the hash, right? Like if you're trying to guess a password, like with password spraying or something like that, that's one thing, right? But if you end up getting the hash, that's a different story.
For sure. And I think most people, that are in an environment where they implement like a typical 8-character password policy, they think 8 characters or even like 10 characters is strong because they think that, I don't know, like the normal attack for attacking those passwords is brute forcing it. Like straight up just all combinations, which in all honesty, 10 characters is still not, it is brute forceable in a relatively short amount of time. But it's still better. It's better than 8. But like the second you make that 15 characters, yeah, that's not gonna happen for me in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
So how do you feel about using like partial words, right? Because part of my job is generating new accounts for users, and you have to create an initial password, and it has to meet the Windows password requirements. And so I just have a giant dictionary list, and I grab a random set of characters from a couple words and add some symbols and stuff.
So I'm not against using dictionary words. I'm against using dictionary words and the password being really short.
and
Length over complexity for sure.
And the trap that I've seen clients fall into is they'll require like a subset of their computing folks, right? Like a subset of the users in the environment to have a strong password. Like, you know what? You're right. This password thing is a big deal. Everyone who's an administrator in IT, they have to have a 20-character password. But the rest of everybody who's in HR, accounting, or whatever, you know what? We're just going to leave it the same because they can't remember anything past 8 characters, right?
Yeah.
That is a terrible idea, because if an attacker is in your environment, or a pen tester or whatever, I don't really care who it is initially. If I'm able to get any additional credentials and I'm able to get to any additional machines to get more credentials, the likelihood that I'm going to find somewhere that someone from the help desk or someone with a really complicated password has a session on a machine.
Well, there's also the whole problem with that is that as an actual attacker, yeah, owning domains is cool, being the IT guy is cool. But if I can go and be the accounting person or the HR person or like somebody else in like engineering or like whatever.
Yeah, like, maybe I don't need to be DA.
What the fuck do I care? Like, what I actually want to go after is stuff that I can get through these accounts.
I've actually been in an environment where getting DA was really tough, but I found someone who was like a database administrator, and I was able to get to all kinds of really awesome data using PowerUp SQL.
For sure.
And I got to sensitive data and never got DA, but I
brings
got
up
to
a
crap,
great
right?
point. That brings up an awesome point. Is even if you did get to DA, a lot of times the DA does not actually have all the privileges that some of the other accounts have,
Especially with Exchange.
Yeah.
Especially with Exchange.
Like, I don't have access to any of our databases, but I'm the DA.
Databases for sure. It's very common like that. Yeah, in your case, you didn't get DA, but what I would have done if I had been on that assessment and I did get to DA, one of the first things I would do is go find SQL admin boxes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go figure out who's an admin of the databases, because they probably have a lot more access to it.
So generally, when I do pivot assessments now, I initially try to get to a domain administrator, but the next places that I look for are Exchange and DA. Like that's where I want to get into email, and I want to get into databases.
Right. And what you brought up the point with Exchange and the organization management group, or the Exchange admins are the ones that typically have access to read everyone's email.
Right.
Yeah, and we have a very limited subset of our DAs that actually have Exchange admin privileges, and supposedly every single authentication request because you have to Azure actually requires 2-factor to authenticate for Office 365. So I have to go to a web page and it'll be verify your password, after I've logged in to Office 365, and then so I'm getting something on my phone, and then I have to type in a reason, and we usually just type garbage because nobody's really auditing it, but somebody could be auditing it. It goes to a couple of our supervisors, and if they ever were looking at this stuff, or ideally you would want to filter it to Bro or some sort of intrusion device, and be well, look for Woody types in funny admin every day, and that's his authentication reason, or Woody's authenticating for admin at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Why is he doing that? That's not typical for him.
Yeah, well, now you're talking about UBA, or user behavior analytics, and that's an interesting topic. I've actually been caught by UBA when it's appropriately implemented.
What is that about? Thank you, Woody.
So, I think password cracking. We're talking about that. You do a Tradecraft Security Weekly on how to use Hashcat, or methodology for Hashcat.
Did I do one for Hashcat? I don't.
Did you? Did you not? I thought you
I don't
did.
think I have yet.
No. Maybe we should.
Actually, you know what? We did. It wasn't Hashcat specifically. We did one on how to crack passwords efficiently, which
Okay.
is more of a generic. I'm pretty sure we threw out Hashcat in
Maybe
there.
there was a blog post.
Yeah, no, I definitely have blog posts on it. But yeah, no, definitely did the Tradecraft episode on how to crack efficiently. What was going to be your point with all that? Just Hashcat's awesome.
Hashcat is awesome. When I was, in training, like saying, Security 504 or other trainings, it was John the Ripper or Kane or whatever to crack passwords. But when I actually became a pen tester and learned about Hashcat and started using GPUs, I don't think I've used John the Ripper outside of a lab when testing a lab ever since, right? I mean, Hashcat is the shit.
Absolutely.
And then, specifically with the NTLM hash, which is typically what I would get in an engagement, using a specific methodology to try and crack passwords, especially if I get DA and get, an environment's entire set of hashes. It's almost like a game or a contest. Like we have testers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have testers who are like, hey, I got 89%.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh, 89%. Yeah.
Were all those
I got
LM hashes?
I got 92. Did you check to make sure they weren't LM too? Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So I want that extra 1%.
Yeah, for sure.
I think my record with you on a red team was 92. I think. But so maybe that would be a good. Specific, like how to use Hashcat would be a good trade press.
Well, I mean, the short version of it is that the extra command line arguments you can pass to Hashcat to do more efficient cracking are amazing. So, for example, like the biggest thing is like a lot of people think like, all right, you have a brute force attack or you have a dictionary attack, maybe a hybrid, but with Hashcat you have so many possibilities.
Yeah.
Basically the quick methodology for what I typically do is I throw it through a dictionary, usually the crack station list, which has 14 billion words.
I think it's 4 billion.
4 billion?
I think it's 4 billion.
Something like that, right? And
Okay, 4 billion, 14 billion. Yeah, either way, like so that list typically on like a 4 GPU rig is 3 minutes.
yes, it's quick. But that includes like a lot of the previous cracked passwords from other breaches. Includes like I think all of Wikipedia, right? Even some ebooks. It includes a lot of words and a lot of actually in other languages too, which is kind of nice. Which is actually interesting to see. If you ever see a cracked password,
You're gonna have to put a link to this in the show notes for people.
Sure, yeah. Well, if you ever see
or give it to me. I don't have it at least. So
if you ever see a cracked password in Hashcat, it actually shows what looks like an encrypted value. It actually is usually in another language, and you can actually decrypt it to the original formatting. And it's just because of the way terminals would output it.
But then after you do that dictionary attack, then you use command line arguments to put a character to
the pen.
3, a pen, and then pre-pen.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? And then digits on either side, like usually 3-4 digits, right?
So like you were talking about how fast just the crack station list itself goes. So crack station plus a character. That's only like maybe 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's quick. Crack station plus 2 characters, maybe 30 minutes, 40, around there. When we start getting to the 3 character limit, it's like almost exponential.
But it's not
it's parabolic.
So 3 characters with crack station NTLM ends up being like on our current rig, I think is like 12 hours or something like that, right? Like or an average set of hashes, and then with 4 digits is where I go next, right? And then then
depending on time too, right? Like I mean, this is actually a really good thing to talk about. It's like the length of time that we typically have for an assessment isn't what your typical attacker would have. We're really a lot more worried about how long it takes to do this stuff than most people.
I have a bash script I have a bash script where let's say that I have a 3-day pivot and I get DA in the first day. My bash script is actually geared to crack as many passwords as I can in a day. Like, in,
For sure.
in an entire, and well, it's
Part of
probably,
that's
it's
using-
probably a day plus, right?
Right.
But then, like, after I'll do Crack Station through, like, I think 3.
characters.
And then,
Rock You.
no, I do Crack Station through 2, Rock You with 3, and then,
So for those listening, Rock You, if you don't know this, it's another password list, but it's a lot shorter.
Yeah.
and then after I go through the lists with pre-pending and appending, then the rules, and I cheat, and you know, other folks who might listen that might are more aficionados of password cracking and actually making a custom list. Sometimes I don't take the time to do that. It just depends.
Oh, you're talking about like a custom word list?
Yeah, a custom
Oh,
word
absolutely.
list.
That's
Yeah.
a big one for me.
Yeah. So, but that's sort of, I'm looking at it like tier 3.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll do that if I have a hash for a specific account
Mhm.
and I'm really trying to crack that account. But I'm like going for broad swaths,
Right.
out the gate and a couple of day engagement. And then I'll just cat all the rules in the hashcat rule file.
So you bring up rules. For
Yeah.
those who don't know, like the rules are really, really powerful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hashcat rules are amazing. The quick and easy thing to kind of like wrap your mind about what rules can do is that you can give it a word list of very plain words, and it can transform them into things like leet speak. So it might transform like an O to a 0. You can start appending, prepending things in certain places. It's a beautiful way to quickly and efficiently transform a dictionary of sorts.
It's got a lot of the password syntaxes that people will use. You
Yes.
know, like
Especially
a word, a number, a word, or
Yeah,
like,
Uppercase
Yeah.
first letter,
Yeah.
dozen numbers on the end.
a great example is leet speak.
Yep.
yeah,
You know,
right. Like I'll just replace an L with a 1 and I'll be super secure at that
the
point.
0. Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned your methodology. I mean, it's obviously similar to mine because we freaking work with it.
I'm
Nobody-
actually really sure you gave it to me.
Yeah. One other thing that I would add is the combination attack, and Hashcat's kind of interesting. So you can actually take 2 word lists and combine them together, which, so like take something like Crack Station, for example, and then take like a year, 2017. So now you have 14 billion or 4 billion words with 2017 or 2018 on the end, right? Which a lot of people take the new year and just throw it on the end of a word.
Wait, you mean January 2018's
Right.
password?
No, winter 2018.
Winter 20.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're January's too long, man.
Yeah, January's a lot of time, right? Yeah.
But part of that problem is because environments force you to change your password so frequently that you are not bothering to come up with like a 20 character random password of just like gibberish, right? Because by the time that you memorize that, your environment has said, well, make a new password.
Yeah, so actually the recent NIST guidelines are to knock that shit off.
Yeah,
right?
and I've seen that, but like a lot of environments are.
Well,
not up to
it's
date
gonna
on that,
take
right?
it's gonna take some time to change because like this the 8 character change your password in 90 days comes from, oh god, if John Strand watches he's gonna be mad that I don't remember the color. But it's like the green book.
It's the green book, yeah.
The green book. It's the green from back in the 80s of how fast you could crack a password over, I don't know, like, a 2400 baud modem or something. I mean, it comes from an antiquated computing time. It does not apply to modern computers, but somehow it got carried forward, and that somehow was because NIST put out guidelines that allowed it to continue, because you would have security folks saying we should really have longer passwords, and then the CISO would look and go, yeah, well, no, NIST says this, and
So
It's got to start with the major vendors. I mean, I just set up a new domain on my home lab, and Windows by default is still enforcing that like 8 character, three different
of course it is.
symbols. But
Well,
but why hasn't Microsoft pushed out a patch so that like brand new environments are compliant with the new NIST rules, right? Like, isn't some of that onus on them?
yeah, well, but I mean, the NIST rules just changed, right?
Okay.
I mean, we're talking about like months. Like,
Yeah.
it's only been a couple of months,
Okay.
right? So I mean, look.
It takes time. I
There
understand
was
that.
a time in my life where I would bash the shit out of Microsoft, but that time has now passed. I think that they have come a long way, and
Except they still have a maximum 16 character on an account.
Yeah, well, you know.
Really?
Maximum, yeah.
Rome wasn't built in a day, I guess, but yeah. That's terrible.
Yeah, if
Damn
you
it,
go sign up for a
Microsoft.
Microsoft Office account, 16 character max.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I don't think that's true
Jeez.
for on-site
What?
environments though, because I've set service accounts
And
before.
what if you even like federated? Like,
No, I don't know about Federated. I'm not sure about that, but.
Because I know I've generated like 30, 40 character passwords for service accounts that like no one's ever gonna type in, but
but wait.
Well, those are
okay.
AD accounts.
Well, you know what? Those are intricacies that don't need to be discussed on this podcast. We've talked about like passwords for a while, and I feel like that since, I mean, come on, we're at Shmoocon. We're probably like 25, 30 minutes in this podcast. Let's talk about Shmoocon.
Yeah, Shmoocon, man.
Yeah.
It's been fun so far. This is
Yeah.
so. These guys have been to it before. This is my first time here. and
Yeah.
I've had a blast so
It's
far.
my second Shmoocon.
it's my third.
It's been a lot of fun. We've seen a couple pretty good talks, which has been awesome.
Yeah, we saw him build a radio watch. So
Yeah, the Travis Goodspeed
Yeah,
talk
that was
today.
really cool. The good watch.
Yeah, the good watch. That was a great talk. I really like the idea of is you could be a couple of blocks from your base station and send Morse code. It's an amazing hack together thing.
And I think he was saying if you have a powerful enough and like line of sight, you can send 25 miles or more.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, so just a quick update. What he did is he basically built his own watch out of like an old Casio calculator style watch. And he actually implemented radio into it. And one of the examples he gave, including those, was you could implement like semi-cam cars.
Open your garage doors.
Yeah,
Garage doors.
Open sesame. Open
So
sesame.
basically, radio frequency to do things on certain frequencies.
Yeah.
And so, one of those things would be open your car.
Uh-huh.
Right?
That's
Like,
right.
push a button and like open your car. And, I mean, that is an amazing hack together thing.
Sure.
So
Anything
Travis
that-
Goodspeed.
Anything that operated sub 1 gigahertz, so basically all of your dumb IoT devices, anything that's got a radio like a car.
Yeah, the other great talk I saw today was the Jaw 3 talk of how client SSL hello negotiations should be fingerprinted to find anomalies in your environment. And so, like, for me, as being someone who's on the attacker end, previous blue team and then now on the attacker end, that was a really great talk because now.
Well, we had some kind of history behind that too, in regards to certain payloads, so we can copy certain antivirus.
Yeah, right. And then we would register our own certificate, and then it would work just fine, right? So they were doing something along those lines.
Yeah, in the beginning of the talk, he talked about how Metasploit is generating SSL certs, and using just 1 or 2 lines of regex, you can determine just by the SSL cert, even though it's randomly generated, you can tell that was generated by Metasploit.
And it's not that the cert itself is generated. What he was saying is like the actual handshake to the server from the payload itself. So the payload is sending a hello packet and using a certain set of characteristics. So for example, certain cipher suites that it would accept the connection with, certain elliptic curves. And
things that were in there.
Like, so certain malwares might have like 12 cipher suites, or certain ones might have 20, like Google might have like 30 or something, right?
Yeah.
And so like that's all fingerprintable characteristics just in that initial hello packet
They were
sent from the client.
taking those characteristics and they were hashing it and then comparing
That's
those
right.
hashes and then looking at those distribution of hashes,
And
right?
for those who want to go check this out, it's called the Jaw 3. J3.
Yeah.
It's actually some people at Salesforce.
That was from both a previous defender and now an attacker standpoint, that was an amazing talk. I thought that was great,
I believe all these talks are going to be on archive.org at the end of the week.
I think you're right.
Nice.
So anybody that's not here and wants to watch them, you don't have to wait long.
I think they're probably.
I would say they're streaming too, but
For sure.
Yeah.
we probably won't publish this before the other con. So
No, probably not. But
It was definitely interesting. I mean, the stealth thing is it's one of those extra characteristics to pretty much any C2 channel that needs to be covered in a way like that.
well, I was recently caught on a red team because I had a previously expired domain that was categorized, that was allowed out through categorization, but there was an analyst in the environment who was looking at certificates, and he noticed that a certificate that was generated within the last couple of days, and also was a Let's Encrypt certificate, and so they pulled that string and found out that there was this machine, and the point of contact came back and said, "Hey, what's up with this one?"
So that's
Tradecraft.
That's a great point for any of the listeners and defenders out there. Look for recently registered certs or generated certs that are using Let's Encrypt.
Yeah, and that goes along with like passive DNS, right? Like if passive DNS meaning like looking at all of everything that is requested in your environment over time in terms of a DNS request, and looking at the least frequently requested DNS items. Like Google.com should be like a million in your environment,
Right,
or whatever, right? But like whatever.com that the attacker is using is probably something you don't see every day.
True. But
I'm not saying that just because it's like a one-off thing that it's bad. I'm saying it's because it's a one-off thing, you should go look.
I'm sure there's a lot of that though. I mean, especially with ads and stuff.
I don't know. With ads, there should be a shit ton of them.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, you've got most of the major...
It's long tail and short tail analysis.
The ads are being delivered from giant ad servers that, you submit your ad to a company and they host it as
Hey, look, network forensics is hard.
Sure.
It takes a person.
Especially when you throw in domain fronting in the mix.
Oh yeah, domain fronting.
Yeah.
I like domain fronting. That's some fun stuff. So what were the other topics that we're going to talk about?
Well, I think we touched on secure digital life for a bit, and I think all we did was talk about our password security
stuff. Yeah.
I think there's definitely more room to talk there. I don't know. I mean, specifically, like what? All right, so Christmas and the holidays just happened, and I'm sure, like myself, I'm sure most of you have family who are not in our same level of tech, I guess, right? What are some common questions you guys get asked when it comes to I mean, not just like IT problems, like my computer's broken, like I get a lot of family members say that, but what are some common things that you get asked when it comes to how do you secure themselves? Do you ever get like messages that are related to, I don't know, something they saw on the news? I'm thinking about like securing the family, what's a good way to secure mom and dad? What's the best way?
I think number one is probably just like point out how open, like their social media is, just hop on with like a brand new account that doesn't have any access to like their groups, like just make a brand new Facebook account and then like pull up their profile and be like, look, I can see all these pictures, I can see all your posts, like you need to lock this down because everybody can see this.
Yeah,
sure,
that's good. Yeah, I don't know. I gave my dad an Ubuntu laptop and he loves it.
Yeah, awesome. No, that's great.
Yeah, he checks his email, he checks, So
your exposure to certain vulnerabilities is totally much more limited when it comes to that, right?
Yeah, well, for the average person, yes. But like if you're talking about a targeted thing,
he's not. Is your dad's home?
Probably not. I mean, I will say, and I've said this in the past, and it may come back to haunt me that like from experience as a penetration tester, and like from what I've seen, and like my very limited and failed attempts at exploit development, Windows 10 is probably the most secure operating system that's out right now in terms of exploitation. I think they're better than what I've seen in Linux and what I've seen in OS X, and I have multiple like variations of. I have an extensive lab at my house, and I wouldn't ever call myself an expert in it, but from what I've seen, Microsoft has done a great job from where they were back in the days of like Windows XP, and then Windows XP Service Pack 3, and then coming up through Vista, and
they've taken the brunt. They've taken the brunt of the force.
Well,
they've taken the brunt of the
because
attacks.
They've learned a lot from it.
And there's reasons for that, and there's lots of stories behind it. But Windows 10, in my opinion, in terms of a mainstream operating system, is really great. And I'll admit that on engagements with Windows 10, I have actually had Defender be a pain in my ass. Son of a bitch.
For sure.
I've had it be a pain in my ass, right? And so, I think they're doing great things.
Not only just win with
And it's
Defender,
very hard to turn off compared to other APs.
Yeah,
things like
it turns back on by itself. Thank you.
Yeah.
Things like Credential Guard, the PowerShell logging, that's been
PowerShell
implemented
logging,
now.
like-
I mean, there's a ton of new features.
And I'm not saying there aren't ways to get past those things. I'm
Right.
saying that, like, when you think about like an attack life cycle and delivering a payload and getting a foothold in an environment, I do think that life is getting a little harder, and I hope it gets a whole lot harder.
We gotta keep on evolving.
Yeah, right. And kudos to them for doing that, right? But I typically now start getting more like app related questions.
Yeah?
Like I've been getting some
like
iOS
a
and some
phone app?
Android. Yeah,
Okay.
like how come this isn't working? How come this app isn't working? Kind of thing. So
How come my Cody box isn't loading up?
yeah, no, seriously. no. I've actually had some family members say, "Hey, I've heard of this Kodi thing. What can you do for me?" Right? And what can I install? And so I really see some of my family members going from actually using a computer to using apps. They're using smart TVs. They're using their phones. They're using tablets. Everything's like app generated. So. Or app usage type thing, and that's where I've been saying this for probably 2 or 3 years and have been wrong, but maybe it's starting to happen where things are moving to more of an application centric type thing for most people, where you have an operating system like iOS, which is in my opinion inherently kind of secure, but the apps that run on it.
So you're saying it's all
Maybe
America's
not.
going to have Chromebooks in the next 5 years?
Yeah,
Also, that's something
something
that
along those lines.
in terms of my family, that's one of the things I've noticed. And my family's pretty tech savvy, but we run into issues. People kind of understanding how. Well, yeah, no, you got your HBO account. That's how you log into your HBO Go or whatever, and then it's tied to your cable account. And then you got this app on your Xbox or something that allows you to log in. And all these credentials, it's all connected. And I don't think they kind of understand where the applications actually live and what's actually going on.
Yeah. I mean,
It's like why does my PlayStation need my cable account?
and if the OS
So I can
is-
watch HBO.
But if the OS is secure, but all the apps are cross-talking and not secure, well, maybe that's
My
the
point is,
issue.
there's a lot of crossover and a lot of communication, and it's becoming an ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just straight up an application.
Well, so I recommend Chromebooks to any family member that's like, what computer should I buy? Say go buy a Chromebook, right? Because that's generally what they need, right? They don't need all of the features.
They just want to be able to go to Facebook.
Yeah, right.
YouTube,
And
Pornhub.
and
And all those things with the Chrome.
I haven't delved deep into how Chrome OS operates, but I know Chrome as a desktop application on Windows isolates every single app into a different process, right? So when moving from one exe sandbox to another be difficult. So even if that specific app is vulnerable, you still have to break out of the sandbox that Chrome has created for that app.
Yeah.
I don't know about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an application security expert, but I would suppose that if you're limited in that regard, even though so you have the potential for exploit, but you take a whole lot of surface area out, right? Where earlier today, like I install an application on my OS, and I say, hey, I need to get this, privileges this, application. I mean, it could be doing things that I didn't want to do, but I gave it permission to do it. So there's really no difference, right? Like I gave it permission to do it, but it depends on how the operating system, works underneath. And again, I don't consider myself an expert in Android and iOS, but I do think that the mobile platform, if it's used properly, is actually relatively inherently secure. Both Android and iOS at this point, and sure there are flaws, but more so
part of
than-
it is just the curated app store, right? So like Windows, your grandfather can just go to whatever webpage and it says download this, right?
Apps, but
Well,
you have the Play Store
can,
or
but you have to jump through more hoops.
Yeah, you
so
do.
the average person, if you have a Windows desktop, can just download and install shit, right?
Well,
and say
so
yes,
granted-
and install it.
granted that, but you still get a pop-up saying like, "Are you sure you want to install this?" Kind of.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Of course I do.
and that's why Windows has
Yeah.
gotten a lot better, right? So like when I downloaded an application, first it pops up and says, "This is downloaded from the internet. Do you
Yeah.
want to run it?"
Exactly.
And I hit yes, and then a UAC prompt pops up and says,
Yeah.
"This wants to
Sure you
install
want
stuff."
this
You
to
sure you
happen?
want it?
Yes,
absolutely.
The answer is always yes.
When did you go ahead, Woody, how many times have you clicked no?
None. None.
I have clicked no, but usually it's because I've double clicked on it multiple times and I don't want to run the install multiple times.
Come on, man, double shells. Please click it again.
It's happened.
Yeah.
This didn't work. Let me run it again. Well, it did work, and I'll take 2 shells for 4, 7.
Yeah.
Wait, stop clicking that.
So-
God damn it.
Back on the Cody discussion, man. People buy them off eBay like crazy.
They're on
I know,
sale
It is
right?
all over the place.
It is
I know.
so freaking easy to
And
inject
so-
like a backdoor into.
Well,
like,
I see my
I was
prices
actually
all
going
the
to
time.
ask you that. Oh, how hard is it to backdoor a Cody device?
It's so easy. It's super easy.
So I've had
It's dangerous running Android.
So
Android malware.
before, like, what do your relatives ask you about? I've had a relative ask me, "Hey, I bought this Kodi device. Is it okay?" Like, well, you already have it running on your network, right? Well, yeah. I'm like streaming a movie that should be watching right now. I'm like, and now you're calling me and asking me if it's okay. So, that's not something that I would personally do, right? Like, there's no way that I would buy a hacked Fire Stick and put it on my network and run things.
Even a lot of like the skins and stuff people download are questionable because so Kodi itself is just a media player application.
Right.
But
There's nothing illegal about it, which
No,
is
no.
why it's okay.
Okay, so I built a Kodi device out of a Raspberry Pi box just to see like what it was about, and then I went about installing like some apps that like I had to go through hoops
Yeah.
to get the apps that were allowing me to download things that
yeah, that's like the skins I was talking about.
Yeah.
Like, that's
So I had
people
to-
write these like basically like the Python scripts to code out like the skins for like connecting to multiple stream sites. And
Really?
yeah,
to get to a channel
to
that's
certain channels that people are running
like Exodus
that are streaming the shit from
Yeah.
like Russia or South Korea
or wherever.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And so I gave it a shot, and then I looked at it and said, you know what? I'll just spend the $15 on Amazon Prime. Fuck it. Like, I'd rather just own them. Like, so I gave it. I a long time ago decided bootlegging isn't something that I was real interested in. Like, I just figured, hey, ethically, if I want to watch it, like I'll spend. It's a lot easier now than it used to be. But now, I mean, I can't say that there's a movie that we've wanted to watch that between Netflix and Amazon, like we haven't been able to watch.
Well, that's always been the fight against piracy, right? Is that it was easier for me to pirate this movie than it was to legally
Yes.
obtain it.
And I don't think that's the case here. I think that if you want, like, if you don't want to pirate, like, I can't think of a movie that I wanted to see recently. Like, we wanted to watch all the Back to the Futures recently, and yeah, I just got them off of Amazon, right? And like, look, spending $15 now, and like I gave, $45 to whoever is getting the royalties for it. But now I can watch it whenever I want. I don't have to worry about not this like questionable device on my network that I'm streaming shit from some site that I'm not really entirely sure from. But that's the thing. But then I have a relative who's like, hey, somebody gave me this thing they bought at a flea market in New York. And I plug it into my network. Is it cool? And then my immediate response is,
No.
Wait, that's not fucking cool at all. Like, it's not cool.
So I don't know if you saw recently there was an exploit for like VLC and a lot of other media players that you could embed code inside of subtitle files, and they would execute the code.
I didn't
right?
see that. That's really cool.
Yeah,
And DLC?
yeah. So like
Hang on, let me shut this down real quick.
almost every media player was vulnerable to this, and I think most of them have patched it by now. But it was interesting because like I use Plex, and I have an add-on for Plex called Sub-Zero that automatically looks at my library files and downloads subtitles from like Open Subtitles and other sources for me, so that it just automatically, like I can open them up and have them play, right? And so, millions of people are using this. And so how hard would it be to create a subtitle file or, generate some sort of exploit like that?
Mm-hmm.
And then you just manipulate Open Subtitles to become the most popular one, it downloads your file, and you've automatically, just using that single exploit, you've created a million computers on your botnet.
To answer your question, how hard would it be? I don't know. A week's worth of work? I don't know. Like, so, no, I mean, I think that going forward, that's sort of my point, is like, if base operating systems become more and more secure, what happens when people subvert that to run applications that they want to do a certain thing, but they need to bypass this restriction of some sort? Like, Kobe's a great example, right?
Well, we're trying to automate so much, right? So like, we just want to be able to automatically play Back to the Future. And if you can subvert that and, use some sort of open protocol that like it's calling to in order to inject your data into it, then, you're bypassing all these security measures that have been put in place just simply by, hijacking some open protocol or some open source website, because maybe it just pulls stuff from GitHub and compiles it for you every week or something.
Hey,
right?
pulling stuff from GitHub and running it automatically is okay. I'm just telling you, as a pen tester, environment is cool. Just do that. It's fine. Like, allow GitHub access. Yeah, it's good.
So a lot of developers are relying on that crutch, right? Like they're just pulling libraries and, or like,
actually, you know what?
JavaScript libraries into their web pages.
Like, that is actually a topic we should save for episode 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
We should save for episode 4 library dependencies and the idea that whatever you download that's open source off the internet is good to go.
Did you spell it right?
And with Python, did you spell it right?
Yeah.
Did you type it in right?
That's not the first title of squatting thing that's been like demonstrated as well.
That was actually something earlier this year, right? Like,
I saw there somebody did one.
pip install HTTP2.
Somebody did one several years ago, and like he backdoored a bunch of things and then like title squatted them. So they got the actual product only backdoored.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And so like it all worked except for like it also did, and he was.
And that was the thing back in the summer with pip. There were some really popular libraries where there was a character off, and
Yeah, and this is not new. It comes up. I guess it comes up in waves because this is something that.
Look, I love Linux. I love open source, but this is a flaw where, like, I tend to just install things, and I use a package manager. But if it's not in the package manager, I mean, look,
That should be on a shirt. I tend to just install things.
drinking I know things. I also install things like that. Right? I also install things. But I mean, there have been lots of times where I've just went and grabbed down some source and like, yeah, I'll admit, like,
Yeah.
I read through every line of the
Yeah.
goddamn code.
Well, it was the one I'm thinking of. It was actually the package manager. They were typo squatting
Yeah.
on the package
So that
manager.
happened with Python. Or
So they were legit
back,
packages
back
so
in the summer.
Yeah. So yeah, it's bad news. Fortunately, the ones that I've heard about have been they were cool about it. All they do was taking metrics. There was a kid write a paper for grad school or something a few
Just
years
taking
ago.
metrics. That's
Yeah, I love
Here's some
this.
shell code. It's just metrics.
Yeah, which is that was the big thing. It's like, well, is that legal? Can you do that? Like,
Have you seen
Probably not,
softening for Windows? It's supposed to be like a package manager for Windows, right? And I love the idea. It would make enterprise management incredibly easy because you just push out a PowerShell script to run on launch or something that just updates all of these packages that you want bundled onto a system, but it's all community maintained. And so you can't do that in an enterprise environment. You can't just rely on the community to have your best interest at heart.
Yeah. Well, I think that is something we should save for episode 4. So
Sure.
somebody
This-
write that down.
Yeah, right. Well, you write it down. Pretty sure it's being kind of documented.
Is this being recorded?
I don't know. Maybe not.
Well, either way, like, I think we've gone about an hour, and
Has it been an hour already?
It has been an hour.
Hold on,
and,
we nobody's told any stories.
Oh, yeah. Stories.
Fireside chats, man. That's what this is all
we
about.
We told some stories about Shmoocon.
Well, that's not pen tester stories. That's kind of what this whole thing is about. You know, pen tester.
Did you show her badge?
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, it's a cool badge.
Okay, fine.
Do you guys have any stories?
I have a story.
I've had no stories from last month.
No, okay. I have a story. So recently, Black Hills, the company that I work for, we did the annual or semi-annual sacred cash cow tipping.
you did this
thing.
story.
Yeah. Hey, this is not a bad story, right? This is an okay story. So we did this thing, and I was actually on vacation the week before, so I didn't really have anything to contribute. But shortly after we actually did the webcast, it was in an environment that had Cylance running, and I needed to bypass Cylance in the environment. And I noticed that the customer actually had egress like wide open, like they weren't blocking anything out of their network with their firewalls. And so I thought, what the hell? I went and got NCAT, straight downloaded off the internet, and from the NNAT project. And I chose NCAT rather than NetCat because I wanted to encrypt traffic if the connection was successful. And so I got the executable downloaded into the environment. And this is a Windows 10 machine with Cylance running. And I established an NCAT connection to my command and control server, which I thought, well, shit.
And Silence didn't block it.
No, Cylance didn't block the connection. Like, no, and all I did was
Like a lot of other things.
well, no, yeah, it did block a lot of other things. And so I thought, well, shit, I have an NCAT connection out, and I typed hello there, and it was certainly received on the other side. So I killed it, and I thought, well, maybe if I shovel a shell, certainly Cylance wouldn't like me shoveling, command exe through netcat over a raw socket, right? No, sure as shit that worked. Like, of all the things Cylance was stopping me on, it didn't stop me on shoveling a reverse shell with NCAT exe downloaded straight off the internet right from the NNAT project's website. And I thought, that is really not a good thing. I mean, look, for whatever good or bad Cylance, you're running, shoveling a shell through NCAT is probably something that should be caught. And so then, later in testing, I actually was able to set up a 64-bit executable to connect back up to the C2 server. So I was able to get actual real command and control established and get past Cylance. But I guess for the folks that are running Cylance and for Cylance,
Well, sorry. So to give Silence the benefit of the doubt, only 10 out of 65 AVs actually detect NCAT as a.
Well, and so I was
What is
actually
binary
talking to the
code?
customer about this. And
I just uploaded a virus, so just for the. I was curious. I was curious.
So-
I want to see. Yeah, I want to see like who detected it. And so
Okay, and
10 out of 65.
And I
80
suppose
vendors.
it is a debatable point whether or not the executable itself is actually malware.
Sure, right? I mean, it upsets me when like
I'll give you that.
TS exec is detected as malware.
Well, fine. Like, and I'll give you that too. So NCAT, right? I'm not really sure what like in an enterprise setting, like the legitimate use of it would be, but maybe there is. But if I'm shoveling command
Just an old
EXE,
school. It's just an old school.
I'm shoveling. I'm just shoveling command. Like, could we have like some kind of mechanism that would just say, hey, are you really sure you want to do this? That way, if it's some kind of automated thing, like I could wrap it, like I could wrap malware around it and like just use NCAT as like, you know, the core of it, right?
Mhm.
Like how would that be any different? So could we at least say, hey, this doesn't look like something you would normally want to do, where I'm taking an executable and shoving command out
Right.
and talking to another,
And maybe not like do anything about it. Like that's
no,
not,
I'm saying
that's not,
stop it by default and let the central folks that are running it saying, yeah, that's cool or
we're
not.
not gonna go release a
right?
burden on it. Like,
Or yeah, at least okay. Yeah,
bare-
fair enough.
the bare
Yeah,
minimum.
fair enough. At least say, hey, somebody did this thing over here. You should because the client actually said, yeah, that wasn't seen at all, right? And then I was able to get some custom C2 out after that and actually use like a rat and and I'll give Silent some props. Like it was getting in my way, like moving laterally through the network. It was giving some troubles, but I was amazed that something that I would consider to be a simple shoveled shell out was not like in any way like wrong.
Sure. Yeah.
Because and actually how I got the other more sophisticated executable there was using Netcat. Actually introduced more malware, so I introduced another stage
Right.
by just using something that wasn't detected in the first place.
Mhm. We were actually discussing it a little bit whenever you were doing it about how it'd be kind of an interesting project to go about working on pivoting with NCAT
Yeah.
alone. Like basically like get because NCAT's not as I don't know what's the word, like it's not as
It would be difficult to deal with in a scaled setting.
it's not where I was going with, but
Oh.
I was thinking more like it's not as big of a framework, something like an interpreter, right? Like you don't have
yeah.
capabilities.
No, basically I just have to
pivot
shell
easy.
on the, but I could also shovel back PowerShell, which
Or
I did shovel PowerShell back, but
Or you could do something like just make like a backpipe node, right?
right.
And then pivot
And
like an
through-
interpreter like payload through that at some point, right? Which that could actually be really interesting. Think about that, right? So get your initial netcat session, spin up another netcat backpipe, right? And now you have like this route of sorts, right?
Yeah.
Through the host over netcat SSL, not getting detected by the local client, and then run payloads against other systems. Like let's say you did PS exec against another system through your backpipe. Like,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
PS exec your backpipe.
Well, I thought we're PS exec
You're
backpipe.
gonna
I am 12.
I wasn't sure what that on.
Yeah.
Where I thought you were going with it was like multiple PS exec or multiple netcat sessions.
Well, hey, why can't you run netcat through PS exec?
Well, you can, but I
Yeah,
thought
so
were talking about
you gotta have some way to
shovel
log
multiple
in.
Have
shells
NCAT,
back.
right?
Yeah, if you shovel multiple shells back, you have a port limitation, right?
Well, you mean-
like
If you can run PS exec on the remote system, you can probably copy a file there.
Yeah.
yeah,
So copy
Yeah.
an NCAT there. You're not going to get detected by silence. Use PS exec to launch netcat through your shell.
just give a different command line or
Yeah.
on the back end. Yeah.
Just go back
So
to
what
the
you're saying
SANS.
is,
Go back to SANS 101.
but that's what I'm saying is like, dude,
Wasn't
like
everything
I'm literally using stuff from Security 560, and I was able to get past silence. That just seems wrong.
Yeah, for
It
sure.
seems wrong.
So I had it's not a long story, it's a quick story. But I wanted to talk quickly about physical testing and the guilt by social engineering. You know, super nice people.
Talk about your last gig.
Yeah. I really hope that a lot of the vendors who, or a lot not vendors, a lot of the companies that purchase physical testing don't do any sort of like real, not
disciplinary,
disciplinary actions against employees that do a bad job or like anything social engineering related. Because I mean, think about like what we do. Like we are 100% involved in tricking people and learning ways to make people fall for things. I mean, granted, attackers are too, right?
Right.
But I mean, you're not gonna like, I don't know, throw a computer out the window by a hacked computer,
Yeah,
right?
but if somebody falls for something, I don't look at it as their fault. That's a policy failure. That is something at the company where, like, let's
I don't
say
know, some users are pretty
yeah, that's true.
blatantly
Policy,
lazy.
For the arbitrary example of like, well, it's actually happened, but for the arbitrary example of I was able to get behind a teller line at a bank.
Yeah.
Like, there should be a hard and fast rule that, like, unless you have actual legitimate identification, you can't
Absolutely.
get behind the teller line.
Absolutely, but you
can't
know
get
what?
the network closet.
But you know what? Sometimes people are just nice.
Yeah, but they're so that's the catch-22 is like they're in a customer service role. They're paid to be nice to people.
True.
To wait on people. To make sure that you, as the customer.
I mean, you've got all these companies out there that offer, you know, like fake phishing services, and every single one of them says, well, okay, these at the end of the campaign, these are the users we identified, and now we offer a training session for them.
Yeah,
right?
so training is the answer.
And then at the end of the training session,
I don't think so.
you implement another phishing campaign, and you know you go through multiple iterations over a period of time. And if you have a user that is repeatedly failing despite going to multiple trainings, then maybe you fire them,
Well,
right?
okay, so let me give you a quick example. So, like a couple weeks ago, I was on a physical assessment where we basically the ruse that we went with was we were pretending to be employees from a certain very prestigious networking company that everyone would quickly know. We do a lot of routers and switches and stuff. And what we did is we
It's
faxed.
Huawei. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, actually, I don't know, they might be bigger. But,
Yeah,
Nobody knows their name in America.
true. Yeah, in China they're huge.
I'm big in Japan.
I'm huge on the internet.
Yeah,
No, so what we did is the ruse is we faxed over a work order saying we're from this company and we're doing this network assessment. We're going to do some network tests. We actually literally on the work order threw a security assessment in there, which is hey, that's what we're there to do.
It's not a lie. Well, that part's not.
it's not a lie.
So not long
Stretching
after.
the truth.
Not long after that, we showed up on site wearing this company's shirts, and were quickly let in. We basically walked to the front desk, and the employee at the front desk, we basically told them we're here from this company, here to do some network tests. She's like, yeah, go ahead, go anywhere you want. Let's walk around. The very short story of this whole thing is she ended up letting us in a network closet, giving us the Wi-Fi credentials to get on the freaking wireless at their company, letting us in locked offices. The network closet was locked.
And you know what? If you ever see this, sorry.
Yeah. Seriously, yeah. To the company, sorry if you ever see it. But I mean, this is it's one of those things. It's like she was so nice, and
But I fall back to
That was her job. Right?
she's paid to be nice.
yeah, that's
She's
true.
paid to wait on people and make sure that like they're getting what they need.
We got to a point where we were about to leave, and we wanted to see if she would just let us use her own computer. And she was walking down the hall, like
Oh God, I have
To go-
I have to drink for this.
to go print something. She's like, yeah, go ahead. My computer's unlocked, and I might have like Facebook open or something.
But you can close that. It's okay.
Yeah, just go ahead, go right ahead. I mean, we would go over there, and she has like her full
Hey, can
email
I
open.
plug this USB stick in? Actually, I need to plug my phone in and charge it for a
As a
minute.
matter of fact, can I just make like a full copy of your hard drive, and
Yeah.
I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like super nice person, and I felt really bad because I really hope that the parent company didn't do any sort of disciplinary action against somebody like that. You know, like so what is the right way to handle that as a company? I mean, obviously training is big because first of all, she had no concept of security because obviously she didn't lock her desktop. She was not cared that I had access to her Facebook account, which that's like to most humans that are on Facebook, like they're at least protective of that.
No,
Right?
no. So training is key. When people start asking certain questions, you begin to be suspicious, right? Like there are certain questions like related to where you're supposed to be nice to, like for your job, right? Like things that you're supposed to be there to facilitate, versus, hey, I'm this random guy that just showed up and I want to get in the networking closet. That's not a normal thing. How many times this year did that happen?
Right.
Well, maybe it happened a lot. I don't know.
Well, actually, yeah, no, I know exactly
the random guy that showed up, right?
I know exactly how many times. Hold on, wait, back here, quick. Yeah, hold on. Before you jump into that, I know exactly how many times. He said how many times has somebody showed up and asked for access to the network closet? I know exactly how many times because there was a sign-in sheet to the network closet.
Yes.
And I was not asked to sign that sign-in sheet.
Oh, I thought you would just put like Woody's name.
That'd be great. Yeah, that would have been the right answer, right? And with his phone number.
Yeah. Like, hey, every time I have to sign a sign-in sheet, that's great. But like, are you validating what I'm putting down on the goddamn sign-in sheet? Like,
How are
I
you
get
validating?
Mickey Mouse, I live in Disneyland. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like I mean, like, does it matter? Like, I signed it. Like, I'm all good with physical controls, but for the love of God, like sometimes it just doesn't matter. Right?
It's hard to do it though, right? So like, I work for a school district, and every time somebody comes into a building, they have to sign in with a system, right? And you know, there's only a handful of systems that are used across the entire United States.
Actually, as someone who lives in the school district that you used to be in, like I am relatively impressed with their level of security, right?
Yeah.
Like, when I walk up to the school, the only complaint that I have is that like there's a possibility of tailgating, right? Like I can tailgate. I've tailgated in before, and then because you know I've walked into the office, but I could have tailgated in and done something else, right?
Yeah.
So tailgating is actually an issue, right? But you know.
So how do you fix that in a school?
Okay, so
Well, it's a perceived level of risk, right? Like I'm actually okay of like someone who's my kids are there. Like I'm okay that in a certain scenario tailgating is possible because I mean nothing's perfect, right?
So those schools, they actually used to have somebody that sat right in front of the door, basically to ensure that there was no sort of tailgating. But because budget cuts and things like that, they had to cut back, and they said, okay, well, it's good enough that we have a video camera pointed.
Yeah.
Well, we did it for 6 months and nobody tried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, look, I'm good with it, right? Like I've actually, as someone who lives in that school district and my kids go there, like, and does security for a living, I am reasonably okay with like what I see. Like it's reasonably difficult for me to walk into that school or without like, you know.
No, right. So back to like authenticating users or authenticating people walking into your building. You know, most people don't have access to the federal databases, right? Like they don't have access to state or police databases. To
Oh wait, when I'm scanning my ID, they're not checking like those things. Or you don't have to answer that. Or you don't have to answer that.
Or DMV databases, right? Because those are all locked down, and you have to be like a specific entity in order to have access to those. So you're relying almost entirely on private databases. Now, like the school is not really concerned that you're like a crazy axe murderer, but maybe they are concerned that like you're a pedophile.
Yeah.
And so, fortunately, the sex offender registry is open, and so almost every school authentication system will have some sort of like way to scan your ID, and then they use OCR or some other technique, barcode scanning.
Like so. And I color like what I see now, like based on like what I remember when I went to school, which was like fucking eons ago, right? Like eons ago, like you just like walking out of school, nobody gave a shit, right? Like whatever. But I at least the doors are locked, right? Like you can't just like go open a door and get in. But anyway,
I think that this has been a good episode, and I think we should go get some dinner. Some
Yeah.
I think it's
Shmoocon dinner.
I think it's dinner and then Shmoocon party time.
Yeah.
And then yeah.
So thanks again. If you're listening to this and you made it all the way this far into this episode, thank you for listening to this episode of Hacker Dialogues. Definitely go subscribe to us on your local podcasting software. I mean, we're on iTunes, so if you go if you use Podcast Addict or any of the typical apps that a lot of people use, you can search for it. And as we throw these out there, hopefully monthly.
Look, we had a New Year's resolution that we were going to do this once
Monthly,
a month.
yeah. Hey,
once a
this
month.
January episode done.
January episode done.
It's done. It's in the books. Now we got to do February, which I think we're going to try to do at B-Sides Tampa.
B-Sides Tampa. We're going to do that and have you guys
And
be
we're gonna-
remote.
Yep.
You guys remember?
And we're going to, try
So-
to do that then.
Go follow us on Twitter. Subscribe. HackerDialogues.com. Thanks, guys.